Now, if you're anything like me, you do not have the budget to be hiring a full orchestra to play on your tracks. However, this is what makes me so grateful to live in the era that we live in today, because we have so many amazing tools available to us through the power of sampling. And today we're going to be talking about the London Contemporary Orchestra Producer Strings, which is the brand new release by Native Instruments. And I'm going to be showing you how I used it to enhance my productions. Now, let's start off by listening to this production as it is in its current form. Now, when I first released this track, if you're curious what it is, it's a track called The Artist, which is part of a score of a short film I made called London. But when I first released it, as far as I was concerned, it was finished. But since the release of LCO Producer Strings, I've really found ways to enhance this production even more. One of the areas that I really wanted to pay attention to was the transition from the more musical section where the strings are playing into the part where the beat drops. So the first thing I wanted to do was to add a bit of suspense and a build-up. So I started off with just this simple chord progression, just 2 notes, and slowly walking up the scale like this. Which by itself on piano is completely boring, but listen to what happened when I placed it into the following presets. Now, all of a sudden, we got so much more energy. Why? Because not only does this sound have the attack, which is this cello percussive layer here, but the real energy comes from the exponential bloom, which is this instrument right here. Now, even though that sounds great because there's the attack at the beginning and then there's this exponential curve that boosts on the back end, it still felt like there was a little bit of a hole in the middle. So I ended up finding this preset called Voltage Messiah, which really just added a bit more body to the sounds. Have a listen to how it sounds. This had a bit of a harsh resonant frequency to it that I didn't want. And that's the great thing with this instrument. You can disengage and engage and swap out layers as much as you want. So I ended up muting that one and just having the thickness of this sound, which sounds like this. So already we're adding so much suspense into this section of this song. So I'm going to give you a showcase of how it sounds with just those 2 elements added, and then I'll move on to show the further things I added as well. So as you can hear straight away, we've got so much more suspense in that section. However, even though that is an improvement, it still feels quite synthetic for me. And I wanted to find something that felt a little more organic, like I actually had an orchestra play on top for this section. I wanted to find a way to add that traditional cinematic suspense to this section. And there wasn't really any preset that was doing it for me, but this is the power of this instrument. I was able to just mute everything and just go through different patches to find sounds that I loved. And I ended up stumbling across viola. Then I went to curated, and curated is wonderful because it really is recordings of the orchestra within its element playing in a kind of natural way that just has fluctuations and flutters in the sound, which is really quite lovely. And this woozy viola ended up just being the perfect thing to add on top. I'll show you how it sounds by itself. Like, can you hear how it almost sounds like, I don't know, the orchestra players are drunk or something, but it just feels quite unsettling. And when I ended up putting the chord progression into this, I just felt inspired to just add moments where the chords kind of clustered and overlapped on top of each other and ended up with this really cool sound that sounds like this. Check this out. Like, honestly, that for me was the real icing on the cake. So if we take all three of those elements and just solo how they sound by themselves, it sounds like this. Now, I couldn't have afforded to have got an orchestra to actually play that on top of this track, but I'm more than happy with how this is sounding, and I really do feel like it's enhanced this section. However, there was one little icing on the cake that was needed, and that was a little run. Just to go into that section, just to go into the drop, just something that would give the feeling of the climax that comes at the end of those strings just kind of overlapping on top of each other. And this run sample ended up being the perfect thing for this. I used the violin minor runs and also the viola runs minor because I wanted the viola to kind of fill in the thinness that can happen when you just play violin by itself. But very simple. By itself, it's very simple, but when you hear what it does in the track, it's really wonderful. Let's have a listen to how that sounds within the context of this section as well. Like, and once again, like, let's remember where I started. I started with just simple piano movement, like. But this is the power of sound selection and having such a well-rounded, curated selection of sounds, because taking those simple MIDI notes, but placing them into the right instruments and the right sounds ended up adding so much energy to that section. Now, for the build-up section in the beginning where the strings are playing, they sound okay, they sound nice. Like, I was happy with how they were before, but when I got LCO, I thought to myself, how can I enhance them even more? And I ended up finding this preset called Brilliant Moment. Which just really rounded out the strings and made them sound much more full. Have a listen to how this sounds. that's enough of me. Honestly, you just got to download this one. Try it out for yourself on your own productions. My name is Alex Elliott, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.